If your job makes you feel crazy, exhausted, and invisible, congrats, you've probably just started your career in America. I still flinch a little when someone raises their voice in a meeting. It's stupid, I know. I'm 37. I've run teams, I've done keynote speeches, I've handled clients worth millions. But a certain tone, that sharp edge of disappointment mixed with forced calm, can still make my spine stiffen. Because for 3 years after college, I worked for a man who broke me down one sharp comment at a time. His name was Mike. He ran a small digital agency in DC, and to me, fresh out of school, broke, and desperate to prove I belonged somewhere, he seemed like the real deal. Slick, confident, fast-talking. He could sell sand to a desert. And he noticed me. "You're sharp," he said during the interview. "Too sharp for entry level, but I like having weapons on my side." That line should have been a red flag. But I was 23, naive, hungry. I just laughed like it was a compliment, and said thank you. The job was chaos from day one. No onboarding, no training. Just figure it out, move fast. And don't screw it up. I was paired with a senior copywriter who barely spoke to me. She seemed annoyed I existed. The whole office did, really. Like every interaction was a competition for Mike's attention. And Mike thrived on that. He'd pit us against each other constantly. "Why can't you be more like Jake?" he'd say one day, and the next he'd tell Jake. "You should learn from Liam's attention to detail." We were his little chess pieces. But I kept thinking it was me. I wasn't working hard enough. I wasn't smart enough. I wasn't fast enough. So I worked late. Like really late. I'd be in the office at 9 and leave at 10. Ate dinner from vending machines. Slept with my phone on my chest in case Mike emailed. And when he did, and he always did, I'd respond in under 60 seconds. It made me feel like I was doing something right. Until one day I missed a typo. Just one. The email he sent me still lives in my head. "Liam, this is embarrassing. I trusted you. I vouched for you. Maybe you're not who I thought you were." I remember reading it in the bathroom stall, gripping my phone like it was a grenade. I didn't eat that day. I barely slept that night. And the next morning, I walked into the office with a 5-page PDF of ways to improve copy quality. Mike didn't even look at it. Just said, "Good. Learn from your mistakes." Then he smiled and offered me his half-eaten muffin like I was a dog that had just done a trick. And I thanked him. Like a fucking idiot, I thanked him. That's the part that kills me most when I look back, not what he did, but how much of myself I gave trying to earn scraps of approval. I shaped my whole identity around his feedback. "Good day?" Mike smiled. "Bad day?" I was worthless. The team changed constantly. People quit. People cried. One girl had a panic attack in the conference room and Mike told her, "You're not built for pressure. This isn't college anymore." I stayed. For 3 years. Because I kept telling myself this is just how it is in the real world. You're lucky to be here. He's hard on you because he sees something in you. God, I believed that so hard. I think the first real crack showed about 6 months in. We had this pitch for a huge client, medical tech company, lots of money on the table. Mike put me on the proposal team, which felt like a massive deal. He made it sound like I was his secret weapon. "I want your fingerprints all over this," he said. "Just don't screw it up." I worked like a man possessed. Didn't go home before midnight for a week. Skipped meals. At one point I slept under my desk because I didn't trust myself to get back in on time the next morning. The morning of the pitch, Mike skimmed the deck I'd poured my soul into and said, "Huh. I thought you'd do better." No feedback. No specifics. Just that. And then he left for the meeting, without me. I found out later he told the client he wrote the whole thing. I should have quit. I should have packed up my shit right there. But instead I spent the day rewriting the deck for next time. Like a dog chasing a stick that was never thrown. Every so often, Mike would throw me a bone. Praise in front of the team. A bonus. This kid's going places. At a staff meeting. And every time, it pulled me deeper. I started to depend on him emotionally in a way I didn't realize until much later. If he was in a good mood, I was on top of the world. If he was distant, I'd spiral. It was like having a controlling parent, except you still had to pretend it was professional. One day, I came into the office wearing a new shirt. Just a simple blue button-down. He looked at me, smirked, and said, "Trying a little hard today, huh?" Then he winked. Like it was a joke. I laughed. Of course I laughed. I went to the bathroom and threw up 20 minutes later. I told myself it was the stress, or maybe the coffee. But it wasn't. It was the slow, steady corrosion of being constantly undermined and called sensitive when I flinched. He had this way of turning your instincts against you. If something felt wrong, you were being dramatic. If you spoke up, you were emotional. If you pushed back, you didn't get the game. I started grinding my teeth in my sleep. I lost weight. My mom asked if I was okay, and I told her I was. Building a future. No one builds a future in survival mode. You just learn how to disappear a little better every day. By year 2, I couldn't tell where he ended, and I began. The thing about toxic people is they don't burn you all at once. They wear you down like water on stone. Little moments. Small humiliations. Every week there was something. Once, he called me into his office to talk. I thought maybe he'd say he was proud of how I handled a difficult client. Instead, he handed me a printout of one of my emails. "Tell me what's wrong with this." I read it 3 times, heart pounding. I don't know, I said finally. "Exactly," he snapped. "You don't know, that's the problem. You don't think like a leader. You think like a task rabbit." Then he got up and walked out of his own office, leaving me there holding the page like it was a pink slip. I stared at that email for an hour trying to find the mistake. There wasn't one. It was just his way of reminding me that I wasn't safe. That even when I thought I did well, I was one bad day away from losing everything. And I believed him. That's the worst part. I stopped applying to other jobs because I was convinced no one else would put up with me. I thought I was lucky he hadn't fired me yet. Stockholm Syndrome, but with deadlines and Friday check-ins. At some point, I stopped talking in meetings. My ideas never landed right. They always needed to be more strategic, or less green. But if someone else said the same thing 5 minutes later, Mike would nod and go, "That's exactly what we need." So I became invisible. Just nodded, took notes, said "got it" a lot. The spark I'd had when I got there, that ambition, that hunger, it dimmed. And honestly, I didn't even miss it. I just wanted to get through each day without a confrontation. I remember one time I asked for a Friday afternoon off. Just one. I had a family thing back in Pennsylvania. He said, "Of course, take it," with that salesman's smile. Then he scheduled a team presentation for 4 p.m. that day, and called me out on the group's Slack when I didn't show. "Liam's absence is noted," he wrote. Just that. Nothing else. But everyone saw it. I got DMs from coworkers asking what happened. I told them I'd gotten permission. They just sent that emoji with the wide eyes. No one said anything. Because everyone knew, Mike always made you pay. I quit on a Tuesday. Not in a blaze of glory, not with a dramatic speech or a throne chair, just a quiet, final decision that settled into my bones like an old truth I'd been avoiding for too long. That morning, I sat at my desk staring at my inbox. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, but nothing moved. I couldn't bring myself to open another passive-aggressive email, or respond to another task with fake enthusiasm. I felt numb, like I was watching someone else live my life. I stood up, walked into Mike's office. He didn't even look up at first, and said, "I'm done." He blinked, confused. "Done with what?" "The job. This place." "You," I said. He laughed, like I'd told a joke. Then leaned back in his chair and gave me that infuriating salesman smirk. "You'll regret it," he said. "You'll be back. They all come back. This industry chews up soft people." I said nothing. Just turned around and walked out. Left my badge, my laptop, my notebooks, even my coat. I didn't want to take anything that had soaked in that air. I remember the moment I hit the sidewalk outside. It was gray, a little rainy, And I stood there for maybe 10 seconds feeling absolutely nothing. Then I started shaking. Like my nervous system had finally realized it was free. I went home and slept for almost 15 hours. Woke up in the dark, sat on the edge of my bed, and cried harder than I had in years. Not because I missed the job, I didn't. But because I finally admitted how much damage I'd taken pretending I was fine. The real grieving wasn't for leaving. It was for how long I stayed. How many parts of myself I'd buried to stay in Mike's good graces. How often I traded respect for the illusion of stability. It took a long time to heal. Therapy helped. So did finding a job where I wasn't afraid to speak. I remember the first time a manager told me, "Hey, great work on that." And I didn't immediately question if it was sarcasm. That moment hit harder than I expected. Because you don't realize how starved you've been until someone gives you something real. Now, years later, I mentor younger folks in the industry. And if there's one thing I always tell them, it's this: if someone makes you feel like you owe them your dignity for a paycheck, leave. You'll be terrified. You'll doubt yourself. But on the other side of that fear is a life where you don't flinch when your boss calls your name. And that is worth everything. Hey, I'm Nate. 38 now, but this happened back when I was 24 and just desperate to prove myself. My first, real, job out of college. A marketing firm in Philly. Looked great on paper. I remember walking into that office on my first day with my little messenger bag and my thrift store button-down, thinking I was about to start my life. It took me less than a week to realize something was off. Nobody talked. Like really, no one. People said morning, with the enthusiasm of a voicemail robot, then sat at their desks in complete silence, fingers clacking on keyboards like they were afraid to breathe too loud. No chatter. No laughing. No. "How was your weekend?" I thought maybe it was a deadline week. But the next week was the same. And the next. And the next. Even the break room felt like a library where everyone hated each other. People would microwave their sad little lean cuisines and eat in silence, scrolling on their phones, avoiding eye contact like it might burn them. And when people did talk, it was fake. Plastic smiles. Compliments with edges. "Oh wow, you actually pulled that off?" Or, "You're so brave to use that font." I thought I was paranoid at first. That it was just my anxiety. But one day I overheard someone say, "Nate seems too happy. Wonder how long he'll last." They didn't even whisper. Just said it. Like I was some temp who dared to smile. I tried to fit in. I really did. I offered to help people. I brought in donuts on Friday. No one touched them. I cracked a joke in a Monday meeting once, and the room went dead silent. Then my manager, Melissa, said, "Let's keep things professional, yeah?" Like I dropped a slur instead of a lame joke about coffee. I started eating lunch alone at my desk, just like everyone else. Headphones in, nothing playing. Just pretending. We all pretended. Pretended we were a team. Pretended we cared. Pretended we weren't silently tracking each other's mistakes. It was the most isolated I've ever felt, surrounded by people. And the worst part? I started to think this was normal. That I was the weird one for wanting kindness. For thinking a workplace could feel human. I remember the day I stopped trying. It was a Tuesday, not that days really mattered there. Every day felt like a slow funeral march in business casual. But that Tuesday, Melissa called me into her office. She had this way of smiling like she was doing you a favor just by looking in your direction. I thought maybe she'd finally noticed how hard I'd been working. I just finished a campaign solo after the lead designer bailed last minute. I pulled late nights. Skipped lunch. Got results. But she didn't say, "Thank you." She said, "You need to be more aware of how your enthusiasm might come off to the team." I blinked. "Sorry?" "The energy. It's distracting. People are here to work, not for pep rallies." I think I actually apologized. I said, "I didn't mean to make anyone uncomfortable." And she nodded like I was a child who'd finally admitted to breaking a vase. After that I shut down. No more good mornings. No more, "Hey, need help with that?" I started tracking my tasks, doing the bare minimum of human interaction. Eye contact felt like a risk. The culture was cannibalistic. People smiled to your face and forwarded your typos to Melissa. I know, because she showed me once, an email I sent with the wrong year in a subject line. She said, "Someone caught this. You need to double-check your work." I looked at the timestamp. It was 10:42 p.m. That was after I stayed to fix the media deck, I said. She shrugged. Doesn't matter. Everything reflects on us. Us, there was no us. Just a pile of anxiety wrapped in a logo. I started getting stomach pain. Real, twisting nausea that hit around 8:30 every morning like clockwork. I thought it was the office coffee. Or the lunch meat. But it wasn't. It was dread. Pure, slow-boiling dread. My friends outside work, the few I still saw, would ask how the job was going, and I'd smile and say, "Busy but good." I didn't know how to explain it. How do you explain being emotionally starved by people who barely speak? How do you tell someone you're being slowly erased by polite silence? You don't. You just keep going. Because the benefits are decent and the office has a kombucha tap. I didn't wake up that morning planning to quit. I woke up late, hit snooze 4 times, stared at the ceiling for 10 minutes wondering if I had enough sick days to fake something believable. I dragged myself into the shower and stood there under hot water until my skin turned red, because it was the only place I could still feel anything. Then I put on the same shirt I'd worn last Thursday, the one no one commented on. No one ever commented on anything. I got to the office at 9:07. Melissa looked up from her desk and checked her watch like I'd spat on her kid. She didn't say anything. She never did. Just let the shame sit there and grow. I walked past rows of people I'd worked next to for a year and didn't know their middle names, their favorite food, if they had kids. Some of them, I wasn't even sure of their voices. We sat in the same space every day and we were complete strangers. I booted up my computer. There was an email from Melissa marked urgent about a file that wasn't labeled correctly. Not wrong. Just not aligned with team standards. Under that, another message from a coworker named Todd. Client asked for a brighter red. Can you handle? No, hello. No, please. Just a line of cold delegation like I was a printer. I stared at that message for a long time. My cursor blinked. My stomach twisted. I remembered this video I'd seen once about frogs being boiled. How if you heat the water slowly, they don't jump out. They sit there and cook. I'd been boiling for over a year. And suddenly I realized the water was scalding. I got up. Walked past the break room where 2 people were eating in silence, staring at opposite walls like inmates. Past the whiteboard that still had last quarter's goals on it because no one cared enough to erase them. I stood outside Melissa's door for a second, then knocked. She looked up with a fake smile already forming. I didn't give her the chance. I'm quitting, I said. Just like that. Her eyes narrowed. You're giving notice? No. I'm leaving. Today. She sat back in her chair, folding her hands like she was about to deliver a TED Talk on professionalism. Nate, let's be adults about this. If there's an issue, we can work through it. There's no issue, I said. I just don't want to feel invisible anymore. She blinked like I'd spoken another language. Is this about feedback? About office culture? Because if you want validation, maybe you're not in the right, exactly, I said. I'm not. I turned around and walked away. Past the desks. Past the silence. Out the front door. Nobody looked up. Nobody stopped me. The receptionist didn't even ask where I was going. That was the part that stuck with me, how easy it was to vanish from a place I'd given so much of myself to. I stepped onto the sidewalk and the noise of the street felt like life flooding back in. Horns. Voices. A gust of cold wind that made me blink. I stood there for a full minute, just breathing. Just existing. Then I laughed, really laughed, because it hit me that I had no plan, no backup job, no next step. All I had was the certainty that staying would have meant losing whatever was left of me. And somehow, that felt like enough. It's been over 10 years since I walked out of that office, and sometimes I still catch myself tensing up in new jobs when someone says, "Let's talk later," with no context. But the difference now? I don't live in that tension. I don't breathe it in every morning like secondhand smoke. After I left that place, it took a few months to find something else. I took temp gigs, odd freelance contracts, lived cheap, and tried not to let the fear eat me alive. Then I got hired by a small nonprofit, nothing flashy, decent pay, tiny team, mostly under 35, running on coffee and too much idealism. And on my first day, something weird happened. People smiled at me. Like genuinely. My manager shook my hand and asked me about my weekend. A woman on my team, Sam, leaned over around noon and said, "Hey, want to grab lunch with us?" I almost said no. Out of habit. Out of fear. But I went. And we sat outside on a bench eating tacos and laughing about something dumb someone posted on Slack. And I realized this is what it's supposed to be like. Work wasn't a prison here. It wasn't about being the quietest or the most useful or the last one to leave. People talked. People disagreed and still respected each other. People asked how you were and actually listened. Over time, I started unlearning the old rules. I started talking in meetings again. Sharing ideas without waiting for the slap. I remembered what it felt like to feel proud of something, not just relieved I hadn't messed it up. Sam became a friend. My manager became a mentor. And I became someone I hadn't been in years, present. I still think about that first job sometimes. Not with hate, just clarity. I see it now for what it was. A place full of scared people taught to stay silent. A machine that kept itself running by making us believe we were lucky just to be near it. I wasn't lucky. I was young. And now I know better. If you're reading this and you're in a place like that, where silence feels safer than speaking, where no one knows who you really are, where you're shrinking just to survive, please hear me, that's not normal. You're not the problem. And leaving isn't weakness. It's the first real sign you're waking up. Subscribe, hit the like button, and explore more fascinating stories.